How come there's so much to know all of a sudden about wood stoves?
I think there always was a lot to know, Dave. People are just not familiar with them anymore, or they've forgotten all about the things that should be known.
What kind of things do you look for when you're thinking of buying one?
Well, it depends on what you want to do with it. You know, whether you're going to use it as a full-time heating unit, or whether you just need something to warm up a room in a little cottage or something. Then you choose something of this type that's built of very light tin, and a very light bit of tinder wood will give you heat in a sudden, all of a sudden. Even newspapers thrown in it. Where if you're going to expect to heat 2 or 3 rooms in the house, then you'd have to go to something of this type that's a little more substantial. One like this is a cast iron stove, because it's a very, very heavy thing, and it takes quite a while to get heat out of it. But once you get the thing heated, it retains that heat, and it also has a tremendously large firebox, will stand greater heat than this one would, so that for overnight fires or something.
Well, from what I know about economics, since these are only 20 or 30 bucks and these are hundreds of bucks, is there a difference in their life expectancy?
And there sure is. Now, this little stove here, probably a couple of seasons of intermittent use, and you'd have to replace it. Where these are normally good for a lifetime with the proper use.
Well, what actually happens to them at the end of their lifetime?
Oh, I think abuse really causes most of the problems, and because they are metal and cast metal, there are a great many things. Too hot a fire, number one, can cause warpage and breakage of the unit. Even the front of the stove and your draft controls cause cracks in the cast iron itself. You lose control of the draft or the air going into it. Even fire could come out through there, and this can happen a great deal. Even some people throwing water into a hot stove to knock down the fire a little bit will crack all the metal.
So after you've made your choice, you just bring it home and set it up and light a fire in it, huh?
Well, no, there's a little more to it than that. You know, you have to put stovepipes on it, and you can go out to any of the stores and get all kinds of stovepipes. Some of the galvanized types of stovepipes give off fumes that are very, very dangerous. So you have to choose the right type of pipe. You have to know how to put it together. You should have a separate chimney for the thing. When you get 2 inlets into a chimney, you lose control pretty much of the draft in the event of fires in the chimney or anything. You should also get a damper in your pipe. They don't come in the pipes. You have to buy it separately.
What about putting it on bricks and things like that?
Well, I don't think bricks are the answer, because even that gets dangerous. You get it up too high, it tilts a little bit. Your best idea is to get their asbestos sheets covered with tin to put under your stove, and it should extend out the front here, because you do open this stove quite a bit to fire. Little coals or sparks can hang on here and drop down and cause damage.
Now, what about that wall? Isn't that stove a little bit too close to it?
Well, you should have a shield, a heat shield in there with air behind the thing, and there are many of them built and made that you can purchase, but you can make one out of galvanized.
Well, stovepipes look pretty simple to put up. Can you just install your own stovepipes?
They're not all that simple either. They have to be fitted together properly. The actual fit, this one should be going into the upper one here, so that sparks couldn't come out. If they were the other way, little warpage on the pipe and sparks will drop out through there. So it becomes a dangerous thing. You have to get the right pipe.
What about the route? I've heard it's clever to run the stovepipe up and then all the way through the room to the other side and then take it out.
It was thought that way. Where people were heating their whole houses with wood stoves, they used to run long lengths, but they also burned down a lot of houses because of a fire takes place inside of that. The creosote in there. The things melt and fall down in the house. Now, it also cools off the pipe over a long distance, and the moisture from the woods condenses in the pipe and forms creosote in there. It's very, very dangerous.
Is there a way you can avoid creosote altogether?
Not completely, but you sure can minimize it by making sure that you burn good seasoned wood.
A lot of people buy their wood. How do they tell if what they're getting is really seasoned wood?
I think you can look at the wood itself, and there's a piece here that shows a great deal of cracking, which means it's dried out pretty well. You see the cracks in it, and you can be pretty sure that that's well seasoned if you see cracks in the end of your wood.
So that's the rule then, burn only well seasoned wood.
Right. Eliminate or certainly minimize any buildup of creosote.
You mentioned chimney fires and creosote. How do you tell if you're having a chimney fire?
There won't be any doubt in your mind at all. You find a terrible roaring draft taking place, tremendous heat. The chimney itself will be belching flames out the top as much as 4 feet high, and you can really hear it.
What do you do?
Well, there isn't much you can do about that except cut off as much air as you possibly can to the unit, which will minimize the burning, and then call the fire department.
Now, lighting this is different than lighting a fireplace, isn't it? You stack it.
Yeah.
Right?
You start in with, crumple up some papers, newspapers, crumple them up so the air can get in around it. Start with a small bit of kindling wood on top of that, and then on top of that, of course, would go your hardwoods on there, because this draft is from underneath in there. The different story over there, that's a different type of stove, and that's a downdraft type of stove. So in stacking your wood for this, you start with all your big wood on the bottom and gradually build up with your kindling wood and your paper on top. Because that's the only way you'd ever get it lighted. And then the draft goes down through the wood and out through the chimney.
Now, you mentioned you can't have the stovepipe too hot, and it's dangerous to have the stovepipe too cool. How do you tell?
Well, one of these little gadgets is available, little thermometer that screws onto the stovepipe somewhere up in the top. And there's a safe area marked on it where you can see where to keep it. And then with a combination of the drafts and this draft, you can pretty well get your temperatures where it should be.
Is there a major difference between the air into the stove control and the air out of the stove control?
Yes. Yes, there is, really. If the air control in here, if you cut this down, you'll get a kind of a smoldering type of fire in here. You can have a real hot fire here and cut this one down, and that means that your stovepipe is going to cool off very, very quickly. So you have to almost use a combination of the two to get the right temperatures in the chimney.
How do you tell what size of a wood stove to get for the space you want to heat with it?
Well, there's a lot of information, consumer information, available on stoves. But I think a good rule of thumb is it's better to have a small stove with a reasonably